You finally sit down. The couch, the quiet, the rare stretch of afternoon where nothing is demanding you. No meeting in 20 minutes, no message waiting on your phone, nothing, technically, that you have to do. And then, before you've even settled, it starts. A low hum somewhere in your chest, a restlessness in your hands, like they've forgotten how to just be still. Your eyes drift to the kitchen. You remember an email you could send. You start mentally drafting a to-do list for tomorrow, which turns into reorganizing your week in your head, which turns into you standing up and going to do something, anything, because sitting there, just sitting there, started to feel unbearable. And here's what's strange. You aren't bored, you aren't lazy, you actually wanted to rest. But the moment you tried, something in you rejected it, like a body rejecting the wrong organ, like rest was the thing you weren't supposed to have. So if that sounds familiar, this is for you. Because the guilt you feel when you try to stop isn't a character flaw, it isn't weakness, and it has almost nothing to do with productivity at all. What's actually happening is much older than that, and much more human. Before anything else, you are not broken. That's important to say first, because if you've spent years feeling guilty every time you tried to rest, some part of you has probably started to believe that this is just who you are, a person who can't slow down, a person who doesn't know how to relax, maybe even a person who secretly doesn't deserve to. None of that is true. What is true is that your brain learned something, very early, very deeply, about what it meant to stop. It learned that stillness wasn't always neutral, that calm wasn't always safe, that being useful, being productive, being visibly engaged with something was how you kept yourself okay in a world that didn't always feel okay. The guilt you feel when you rest is not a moral failing. It's a signal, an old one, a signal that made perfect sense in a different chapter of your life, even if it's exhausting you now. For a lot of people, love arrived with conditions they didn't recognize as conditions. Not because anyone was cruel, often because the people around them were doing their best, carrying their own unexamined beliefs about what a person's worth looked like. But the result, regardless of the intention, was the same. Praise arrived when you performed. Attention arrived when you achieved. The room got warmer when you brought something home, a good grade, a finished project, a useful contribution, and cooler when you didn't. Maybe it was a parent whose face lit up at your report card and went quiet the rest of the time. Maybe it was a house where tensions simmered beneath the surface, and staying busy, staying small, staying useful meant you didn't become the thing that made it worse. Maybe there was no visible reward system at all, just a persistent, wordless atmosphere that said, people who matter are people who do. The brain, especially a young one, is extraordinarily good at reading these atmospheres. It doesn't wait to be told the rules. It infers them quickly and accurately from what gets rewarded and what gets ignored. And what it concluded, in home after home, across generation after generation, was this: your value is located in your output, in your usefulness, in your constant, demonstrable doing. So when you stop doing, even for an afternoon, even when nothing is actually at stake, the brain doesn't experience that as rest. It experiences it as exposure, like you've suddenly removed the thing that made you worth keeping, like one quiet Saturday is all it takes to slip back into not enough. The guilt isn't irrational. It's the old equation still running, still trying to keep you safe the only way it ever learned how. But there's something else happening beneath that guilt. Something that lives not in the mind, but in the body. For people who grew up in unpredictable environments, homes where the temperature could shift without warning, where a good day could turn without logic, where staying alert and ready was the thing that kept you one step ahead of what was coming, the nervous system didn't learn stillness as safety. It learned stillness as the pause before impact, the quiet before someone's mood changed, the moment of holding your breath. So the body trained itself over years and years to prefer motion, not because motion felt good, because motion felt manageable. If you were doing something, you were handling something. If you were busy, you were in control.
If you kept moving, you stayed ahead of whatever invisible threat had never fully announced itself, but had never fully gone away either. This is why, for some people, the most genuinely peaceful environments still can't quiet them. You can go on vacation and feel more anxious than you do at your desk. You can have a completely free Sunday and spend it cleaning the apartment with a kind of furious efficiency that doesn't feel like a choice. You can lie down to rest and feel your heart rate rise instead of fall. That's not a personality quirk. That's a nervous system that was never taught that stillness was an option, that spent so long associating calm with the moment before danger that it genuinely does not know, on a physiological level, how to read peace as safe. The restlessness you feel when you try to stop isn't weakness, it's your body doing exactly what it was trained to do, still protecting you from a threat that is no longer there.
There's a third layer that's harder to see because it's so woven into how you understand yourself. Ask someone who genuinely cannot rest who they are, not what they do, who they are, and watch what happens. Almost always, the answer is their roles, their output, their function in the world. I'm a manager, I'm a builder, I'm someone who gets things done. I'm the person everyone comes to when something needs fixing. When your identity and your productivity fuse completely, stopping doesn't just feel uncomfortable, it feels like vanishing. Like if you went quiet long enough, you might lose the thread of who you are entirely, because the doing isn't separate from the being anymore. The work is the self. The output is the proof of existence. This shows up in small, almost invisible ways, in the particular dread that settles in on Friday afternoons, in the way a 2-week vacation sounds appealing in theory and fills you with low-grade panic in practice, in the way you introduce yourself, almost exclusively through what you produce or provide, and feel genuinely uncertain when someone asks who you are outside of that. Rest, for someone in this position, isn't simply unproductive, it's destabilizing. It removes the one context in which you've always known how to exist, and the mind, rather than sitting with that uncertainty, translates it into something more familiar, something more actionable: guilt. The feeling that you should be doing something, that the stillness is wrong, that somewhere, something is being neglected.
Because underneath all of it, the conditioning, the nervous system patterns, the identity fusion, there's often one more layer, the quietest one, the one that only shows up when everything else goes still. Sometimes the reason the body resists rest isn't about doing enough, it's about what rest lets in. When you're busy, there's no room, no gap for the things that have been patiently waiting, the grief that didn't get finished, the relationship question you've been circling for 2 years, the slow realization that something in your life has quietly stopped fitting and you haven't figured out what to do with that yet. These things don't disappear when you're busy, they just wait. They sit just below the noise, patient and unhurried, ready to surface the moment you stop generating enough activity to drown them out. Busyness is an extraordinarily efficient avoidance strategy, not because you're avoiding life, but because you're avoiding the specific parts of it that you don't yet know how to hold. And the body, being smart, learns to prefer the strategy that keeps those things at a manageable distance. The guilt in these moments is a decoy. It gives the mind something concrete to focus on, a list, a task, a sense of productive urgency, rather than the formless, harder thing that would surface if the list ran out. This relationship between you and rest isn't static. It changes as you do, even when it doesn't feel like it. In your 20s, the guilt often feels like fuel. The world rewards the version of you that never stops, and the relentlessness gets mistaken for ambition, for drive, for admirable self-discipline. Nobody asks if the engine is healthy, they just appreciate the speed. In your 30s, something starts to shift. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, you begin to hit the goals that were supposed to make the guilt go quiet, and they don't. The promotion arrives, and the restlessness stays. The milestone gets checked off, and the feeling that you should be doing more doesn't lift the way you thought it would. And that gap,
between the achievement and the relief that was supposed to follow, is usually the first honest signal that something more fundamental is going on. By midlife, the body often stops waiting for the mind to catch up. The fatigue becomes harder to push through. The cost of constant motion starts showing up in ways that can't be scheduled around or optimized away. And what once felt like productivity starts to feel, quietly and undeniably, like running. The same behavior that once meant, "I am driven," starts to ask a different question. What exactly are you running from? The pattern doesn't disappear, but its meaning evolves. And the fact that you can hear the question, even if you can't answer it yet, is already a different relationship with yourself than the one that started all of this.
Here's what all 5 of these things share. For people who feel guilty resting, productivity was never really about productivity. It was about regulation. It was the mechanism the mind developed to manage anxiety, to earn safety, to create the sensation of control in environments where very little felt controllable. The output was almost beside the point. What mattered was the feeling that doing something, anything, generated. The sense that you were on top of it, that you were okay, that nothing bad could reach you while your hands were moving. Busyness became a blanket, not because you chose it consciously and not because you were weak, but because it worked. It muffled the frequency of the worry just enough. It gave the nervous system something to organize itself around. It made the world feel, if not exactly safe, at least navigable. The guilt you feel when you try to put the blanket down isn't proof that you need it. It's the blanket reminding you that it's still there, that it kept you warm once, that part of you, the old part, the careful part, the part that learned all those early rules, isn't sure yet that you'll be okay without it. So if you've spent years feeling guilty for resting, if you've canceled plans with yourself because the couch felt irresponsible, if you've turned off a show halfway through because the voice in your head said you hadn't earned it yet, if you've watched other people rest and wondered genuinely how they do it without the hum, know this: that guilt isn't a verdict on your character, it's a record of what you survived. It's the shape your mind made to keep you functioning in circumstances that didn't always make functioning easy. You don't have to fix it today. You don't have to trace it all the way back to its origin or do the work of dismantling it or arrive at some clean resolution where rest suddenly becomes simple. None of that is required right now. You just have to know what it is, an old rule, written in a different chapter, by a version of you who is doing the best they could with what they had in a world that didn't always offer much. You're allowed to rest, not because you've earned it, not because everything is finished, not because you've proven conclusively that you deserve the quiet, just because you're here, and that has always been enough. If this video made you feel seen, consider subscribing. We make more content like this, about the human mind, without judgment, without quick fixes, just understanding, every week.